Recording in progress. We have lots of donors, staff, alumni, current students, current coaches, current and potential partners. So it's really an amazing group tonight, and really such an audience that really reflects the fullness of our community and all of our stakeholders. So thank you so much for being here. And we're really excited to get started. So I'm Lena Eberhardt. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO of Let's Get Ready. I was formerly the Chief Program Officer and have been the CEO for about 2 years. And before that, have worked in college access and success, primarily in New York City for almost 20 years. So started out as a college advisor at a couple of public high schools and then made my way to the nonprofit side of things, and have really been committed and passionate about college success ever since. So tonight, you're going to hear a little bit from me about where we're at now as an organization and where we're headed. So sort of bring you into our strategic vision around the program, around partnerships, and around fundraising. And then I'll turn it over to an amazing panel of staff and coaches, and also an expert on the higher ed landscape. So as you can imagine, the higher ed landscape is changing all the time, as it often does, but in the last couple of years in particular, there's been such a high rate of change and evolution. And so we really wanted to learn for ourselves and also help all of us know sort of where the field is headed in a bigger picture way. Just a reminder, as you just saw, that the event will be recorded, and the recording will be available at our website. We'll send it to everybody after the fact as well. And you should always, of course, feel free to share it with anyone that you think would be interested. And we have a lot to get to this evening, so I'm going to get started. So you can see the slides we have here. Again, sort of just sharing an overview of our current snapshot, and then our strategic plans, so where we're headed from now until 2025. So on the first section of this, and Zoe, you can scroll to the next slide. The next one. So the current snapshot, our theory of change. I think many of you are familiar with our model, but maybe not all. So just quickly, the ultimate outcome of the organization has been and always will be that we really want to make sure all students, and particularly students from historically underrepresented backgrounds, have the support they need to attain a college education, and really focused on meeting their own college aspirations. So helping them really develop what is their own personal college aspiration, and then working with them to make that happen. And we do this through well-supported and highly engaged near-peer coaches. That really is the secret sauce. All of our coaches are currently enrolled college students, and over 75% of our coaches are either former participants in the program or demographically representative of the students we serve. And we really focus on relevant and student-centered content. So that looks like, text message curriculum, phone scripts, a resource library, all kinds of materials that really help students get the information they need. And then through sustained and collaborative partnerships. And we'll talk a little bit about more of that later, but that's a critical piece of our work, making sure that we're supporting the communities and the institutions that support students as well, and really partnering with them for student success. And through all of that, we help students gain meaningful connections to their coaches and to Let's Get Ready, access to critical information and social and emotional support. And they also develop the self-efficacy skills to pursue and achieve their college goals, as well as a critical sense of belonging in a college-going community. And again, not everyone is fully familiar with our model, but just very briefly, the way all that looks is we serve students from 11th grade all the way through 6 years of college. And we do it through 2 phases, pre-matriculation and post-matriculation. So in our pre-college matriculation phase, it's 11th and 12th grade. It's our SAT prep curriculum. It's a lot of coaching and support around college applications, financial aid, finding the right fit, helping students identify the factors that are most important to them in their decision-making process and making the right call for them. And then in the post-matriculation phase, we're ensuring that students actually do matriculate into college, and then that they persist semester over semester, year over year, until ultimately they graduate. And we do that through lots of resources, content, information, reminders, and lots of encouragement, and lots of taking in just how they're doing socially, how they're doing financially, how they're doing academically. And so that's sort of how the program looks from a student perspective. On the next slide, we'll see the snapshot of who we served in this most recent school year. And we served, as you can see, just over 13,000 students with 150 college students who served as coaches. And the students we served came from, this is a new stat for us, but it was fun to see that the students we served come from 856 zip codes across 22 states. And so, you know, many of you are familiar with our geographic footprint that's been really concentrated in a few places. But even over the last couple of years, and again, we'll talk about this more, we've started looking at new geographies, new states, new communities that really are well set up for collaboration and partnership. 90% of our students identify as people of color, and 91% of students come from low-income backgrounds and or will be first in their family to go to college. On the next slide, you'll see we track many things to ensure the quality and the impact of our program over the course of that continuum. And, you know, things like student and coach experience through surveys, tracking evidence-based milestones through every phase of the process. We're also looking at, you know, monitoring student engagement through the different phases of the program. But this is all in service to our ultimate outcomes, which are student enrollment and student graduation, college graduation. And so you can see here where the program is working. We are seeing a big impact in terms of our students. When we look at them against the peers nationally, our students are enrolling in college at rates well above their peers, and importantly, graduating college at double the rate of students from similar backgrounds. Obviously, this isn't enough for us, right? We want to make sure that our students are enrolling and graduating from college at rates that meet or exceed the rates of their highest income students across the country. But these are important benchmarks for us to monitor our progress in a really high level way. On the next slide, next section, I believe, yeah, so the case for growth. So, you know, we've been doing this for a long time. The organization is almost 25 years old, and we've evolved quite a bit in terms of the program model, our approach, our operational infrastructure, our technological innovation, all the things that we're able to do. And because of all that, and because of a lot of reflection in the last couple of years, we recognized that this is really a pivotal time for us to grow. There's, and Zoe, if you go to the next slide, the most important reason for us to grow is that there's a significant need nationwide for support of students in this effort. You know, college enrollment rates were hit hard through COVID, and there was quite a dip in college enrollment across the country. And college graduation has long been a real area of concern. So a lot more students over the last 20 years or so have enrolled in college, but there's a real drop off in terms of students graduating from college. And you can imagine how high stakes that is and all the implications of starting college but not graduating. So there's just a significant need. And I would say that there's a significant need in particular for our brand of program because it is so youth-centered, as you can see. The program model is built around our students, right? The idea is that the students with the right support, with the right structure around them really can do amazing, powerful, meaningful things to move this work forward. So really focusing on that youth-centered aspect. And then a really low barrier to entry. We are able to serve students from any community with any academic profile, as long as they do have a college aspiration and are from a historically underrepresented background. We can serve any student. And I would say actually that we really take this to heart when we think about partnerships too. We want to make it as easy as possible for students to participate in our program. And we also want to make sure it's as easy as possible for partners to participate in our program. And so we really, pride ourselves on our ability to create an operational system that makes it really easy for people to benefit. And then Let's Get Ready provides at least 6 years of service. And really, this is often more. So as I said at the beginning, we're serving students for up to 6 years of college, and then the 11th and 12th grade as well. So if they go through the entire program, and it does take them 6 years to graduate from college, that's 8 years of programming. And that's relatively rare, especially because we've developed flexible entry points. So students could enter in 11th grade or 12th grade or in college. And so that's a really important differentiator as well. And then we're very cost effective. Our program it's under $250 per student annually to run the program. And across the industry, that's a very low cost per student. And that's just really important to us. Again, to me, it sort of plays into that low barrier to entry. If things are financially feasible and financially sustainable, it allows more people to participate. It allows us to serve more students. And then we're fully virtual. We have been mostly virtual, even pre-COVID, and now have really made a commitment to move forward in 100% virtual way. And we have seen that we can do that, not just without decreasing the quality or the meaning of the experience for the students, but actually in a lot of ways actually increase that experiential component. And you'll hear about that more on the panel potentially. But this virtual piece, you'll see more when we talk about investments, but this takes a lot of really strategic thinking about technology, about sort of innovative new tools we can use to make sure that we're serving students virtually in a way that is still really relationship forward. It's really differentiated. It really focuses on the unique needs of each student. On the next slide, we'll talk about sort of how we get there. So this is a plan from now until 2025. And so if you can go to the next, we know that in order to reach our ambitious goals, to really serve the students with the quality, the impact, and the real emphasis on values that is so important to us, we need to invest heavily into our programs, to invest in the innovative program tools I talked about, but also just bring on new program staff as we grow. Partnerships. So as I said, partnerships are such a crux of what we do, and we need to really invest to make sure that our partners are getting the best possible experience, that we're out in the world cultivating new relationships with new partners that can really help us build that pipeline to the students who really need the support. And then our operations, we need to ensure that we have highly efficient, centralized administrative operations. And to me, this is a thing that obviously we need to do this for compliance, we need to do this for efficiency, et cetera. But this is a place actually where a lot of our values show up, and making sure that the experience for every stakeholder, and particularly our student employees, as well as our full-time staff, that all of our operational processes and protocols and policies are really infused with equity and a real attention to values. And then communications and advocacy. We'll talk about this a little bit as well on the next slide. But we know that to get where we want to get, we need to better tell our story, raise up our student voices, and just influence a wider audience of stakeholders in this conversation. To do all this, we know that we need to raise an additional $5 million over what we would currently be raising if we were just staying steady. And actually, of that $5 million, we've already raised over $2 million of that through incredible, generous donors who really believe in our plan and who have provided multi-year major gifts over the course of this plan. So on the next slide, you can see our priorities, investing in all of that and really getting all of that right that I just talked about will allow us to accelerate our growth to serve 25,000 students by 2025. And you might remember we're just over 13,000 last year. So it's almost doubling the number of students by 2025. Expand well beyond the Northeast. And this has already been happening over the course of the last couple of years. We have students in Texas for the first time, in California for the first time. As you saw, 22 states are represented. But continuing to think about sort of our geographic footprint in a more national way. Increasing equitable practices internally and developing our capacity for external advocacy. So I mentioned this a little bit. We've set a lot of priorities in this area. This year we had really explicit equity goals, and we've built some for this coming year as well. But there's work to do to really create an organizational vision around what does it mean to really be an equitable organization and an anti-racist organization in this moment. And then in terms of the advocacy, I think we all know that while we're primarily focused on the success of our students, LGR students, we want to make sure that we're using our platform, we're using our data, we're using our experience of what it takes to help students be successful, to make sure we're improving the ecosystem for all students across the country and really thinking about sort of systemic barriers to success in higher education. Further focusing our programming around strengths, so we'll get to more of that on the panel. Expanding large-scale partnerships, as I mentioned, is a critical part of our work. We've been having really exciting and promising conversations with community colleges, with high school networks at the district level in various states and cities. So this work is really exciting and really propelling us to the next phase. And then, of course, as we mentioned, all of this will take that bigger investment. And so we need to just enhance our fundraising efforts around those goals, including adding to our already incredible board and thinking about board recruitment in a really strategic way. So this is the last slide. And again, just sort of a snapshot here. So you can see on the right-hand side, year over year, what will this look like? So we're coming into 2022. Our goal this year is to raise $3.4 million and serve 14,000 students. And as of today, actually, we're on track to really exceed that student enrollment goal. So I expect us to serve over 14,000 students this year. So we're sort of on track in that way. But you can see sort of how it goes year over year, and we're definitely backloading the growth. We're sort of, in a mode of getting ready, finding those partners, finding those students, getting everything internally sort of ready for that growth, and bringing in lots of new students while we do it. But you can see sort of the exponential growth towards the end of this plan. So that's where I'll end this part of the presentation. We just wanted to bring you kind of into the big picture and the high level of sort of, again, where are we at and where are we headed? And now I'm going to introduce Marvin Vilma, who's our Director of Individual Giving. And he's going to facilitate a panel discussion to give you sort of a sense of more the experiential sense for our students and stakeholders in the program.
Thank you, Lena, for that introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm incredibly excited to be moderating this panel and to be a part of this conversation. And it's primarily for two reasons. The first reason, as a first-generation low-income student myself, there's so much about the mission of Let's Get Ready that resonates with me as I think about my own lived experiences. And the second reason is I was a coach for Let's Get Ready during college. And to see the organization evolve and really meet the needs of students during this time is a really special sort of thing to be a part of. So I'm excited to be here with you all. So in a moment, I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves. I'll just wait for everyone to be pinned up on the screen. And our panelists today are really going to provide some color and context as to why the strategic plan is so important. They'll provide a lot of the stories that will hopefully help us understand what the strategic plan can do as we sort of move forward together. So we'll start with brief introductions. If you all could just share your names and your involvement with Let's Get Ready, I would appreciate that. Let's start with Grace. We'll go to Meg second and Tiffany third. So Grace, let's hear from you.
Hey y'all, it's nice to be here with you. My name is Grace Bianchardi. I'm the Chief Program Officer here at Let's Get Ready. I'm coming up on my 5th year with Let's Get Ready and come from a K-12 background.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Meg Swift, and I am on the New England Regional Advisory Board. Have been on and off that and the Maine Council. I'm now based in right up north of Portland, Maine, where I work in admissions at Bowdoin College. And it's fun to see Jeannie laying out there as I was at advised Let's Get Ready as a program officer at the Phillips Brooks House back in the early 2000s, right after Jamie had graduated, but it's fun to circle back around with Let's Get Ready.
Hi, my name's Tiffany. I'm currently a senior at NYU. I've worked with Let's Get Ready in a few different capacities. Currently, I'm working as a success coach, but in the past, I've worked as a virtual access coach and then an access coach in person as well.
Wonderful. Thank you all for those introductions. Tiffany, I'd love to start with you and just check in and see how you're doing. Obviously, these past few years in college have presented some major challenges. I'd love to hear how the school year is going and how have you been these past few years as you're navigating a new learning environment?
Yeah, so we're just starting our school year off in person after being online for a year and a half, I think. So it's definitely been a little bit of an adjustment, but it kind of helps that everyone's going through the same thing, like teachers, faculty, my peers, everyone's kind of going through it together. So that's helpful and kind of like creates a sense of community. And then I noticed that there's also a sense of understanding, more patience and more flexibility among faculty and teachers that wasn't as prevalent before the pandemic, which I think is a really big positive. And then also I'm excited to be graduating soon. I know everyone says this, but it really did go by super fast, which probably has something to do with being online and virtual. But yeah, overall, it's going really well.
Fantastic. And we are also so excited that you are graduating soon. An early congratulations to you. Can you tell the folks out there what you're studying and what you'll be graduating with this spring?
Yeah, of course. So I major in public policy and then I minor in global and urban education studies.
Phenomenal. Thank you. So I want to double click into your experience with Let's Get Ready for a moment. You mentioned that you served as a coach in the Access program when it was in person, and you also served as an Access coach virtually. Can you tell us a bit more about how the role transitioned for you, moving from in-person learning to virtual coaching?
Yeah, so I think the two roles are so different, being in person and being virtual. It's so hard to compare because there's so many things that have changed. I think a lot of teaching is based on reactions and responses from the students, and that looks really different in an online setting. Supporting students virtually required me to have a strong sense of communication. It was a lot of like checking up on the students, and I think there was an emphasis on mental health when Let's Get Ready to transition virtually, just to make sure that the students were doing okay. And I think that was a really big positive. I think also in my current role, I'm currently supporting students who are transitioning into, a lot of them transitioning into in-person for the first time in college. So it's a lot of helping them navigate that. And a lot of them are super excited, but understandably, a lot of them are also like a little bit hesitant and nervous. So it's a little bit of supporting them, but also a lot of being there for them and being their cheerleader, which has always kind of been my role at Let's Get Ready. So that's something that's also remained the same.
That sounds like an incredibly awesome responsibility to have to mentor young people in that way. How has Let's Get Ready supported you on this journey? Because I imagine there's some training involved in order to prepare you to interact with students in this way. What are some of the supports that you received?
Yeah, so the training is always really helpful. And then also weekly check-ins and knowing that my supervisors are always there to offer support where I need them, being readily available to answer any questions I have, being super flexible, being super communicative has been really helpful in helping me navigate this role. And then also my supervisors kind of doing their own research and being able to give me the best information I need to support my students.
So there are a few points that you made that I want to come back to, Tiffany, but I'm going to move on to Meg for a brief moment here. And I'd love to check in with you, Meg, and see how you're doing. As a former admission officer, I know that in every application season, there's a lot of hard work that goes into shaping a class, but it feels especially challenging these days how has it been for you? How has the admission cycle played out at Bowdoin, or more generally these past couple of years?
Yeah, it turned everything upside down. I was in a meeting the other day where someone said they didn't know what Zoom was on Friday, March 15th, and by 2020, I should say, and by Monday, March 19th, they knew everything there was about how to work with Zoom. And so, to twist entirely and try to market a school and educate a student population all virtually certainly presented all sorts of challenges over the 2020-2021 academic year. I think my colleagues and I were so thrilled in early June when we were able to open the campus to visitors for the first time, and just the energy and excitement of being able to see real faces with bodies that go along with it. We did our information sessions outside under a tent, and just the energy of people being there in person, being able to connect with our tour guides and really see the campus, I think was a really exciting way to come back. I think there were all sorts of great hopes for the fall. We made lots of plans for travel and our fly-in programs. And, then August came around and we all were impacted all over again by the Delta variant. And so I think things have been scaled back, and the biggest challenge right now is just the hybrid nature of it, trying to reach students in the virtual space, reach students whose schools and CBOs are welcoming in person to actually be there in person, to try to build on the strengths of what the virtual world forced us to do in terms of access and accessibility, but at the same time, there's no replacement for being able to talk to students in person and hear what's on their mind and connect them with the current students who can really provide answers and perspectives for them, that I think makes that transition to even considering applying to a particular school so worthwhile.
Thank you for that insight. And I saw Tiffany shaking her head as you spoke about the energy of students being on campus. It certainly resonates, it seems, with you, Tiffany, and it does with me as well. You mentioned or started to talk about the challenges of recruiting students in the midst of everything being hybrid or virtual. I'd love to learn more about how schools like Bowdoin are recruiting underrepresented students specifically, because I imagine it presents a special challenge. You mentioned interacting with CBOs and hoping to meet with them in person. But tell us more about how you've been trying to solve this problem and how organizations like Let's Get Ready can be supportive of these efforts.
No, well, I think one of Bowdoin's biggest programs that we do to reach first-gen underrepresented students is our fly-in programs. And last year we did that in a virtual space, and we thought this year we would do one virtual and one in person. And that didn't happen. We were doing two of them virtually. We had our first one last weekend. So this consisted of 3 evenings, Thursday through Saturday, where we had students back in August apply to this program, and we wanted to give them a taste of what life at Bowdoin is like. So it was a combination of exposing them to, they had a conversation with the president, they heard about support services from our different campus offices that are offering that. There were various student-to-student conversations. We had mentoring meetings with admissions officers. So that's sort of the format that we used over 3 different nights. We're going to do this again in 2 weeks. So can't get them physically to campus, but the hope is, and this is a program that we've been running for years, to try to enable students who couldn't get to campus due to resources to be able to come to campus. And, I think ways that Let's Get Ready can promote that in terms of just making students aware of things like the fly-in programs, that there are many schools that offer this type of opportunity. And it's a great way for students to really sort of kick the tires and see if this is a school that makes sense for them. I think one thing that is especially great in listening to these conversations is just to see the types of questions that students are asking about the support that's available to them. And I see Let's Get Ready as a real foundation for allowing students to think through the types of questions that they should be asking. You know, what should that support look like? And they're getting it from their coaches, and they're watching coaches go through a college experience and understand the importance of mental health and support services on campus that are both academic and mental health. And so in order to think about the schools, the campuses that work best, that may be an outlet for these students, I think this is a great opportunity. And I apologize, I didn't describe what a fly-in program is. So many schools will offer students a chance to come to campus, and this is a expense paid. We will cover the airfare or the bus fare depending on where a student is coming from. And then in typical years, we will put students up in the dorms with current students, so they get to experience the life of a college student. They'll go to classes, they will meet with different aspects of the college life.
Thanks, Meg, for answering that question in the chat. You talked a little bit about the transition to virtual, making it accessible for more students to learn about institutions like Bowdoin that may have been out of reach before. And I'm actually going to segue to Grace to talk more about the opportunities that come with virtual engagement. Grace, can you tell us a bit about the decision to move fully virtual and what that has offered Let's Get Ready, in terms of scaling support to students?
Yeah, sure, happy to. So I think, as Lena shared earlier, the good news for Let's Get Ready was that a lot of our program was virtual before. So before the pandemic, we had a vision for what robust mentorship could look like in a virtual space. Like, we knew that coaches and their students could build meaningful, impactful relationships over text, over phone, over email, because we'd seen them doing it for years. And so the good news for us, whereas I think a lot of organizations and schools were trying to figure out, like, is this even possible? We knew that it was possible. We knew that it was meaningful for students. And we had some ideas about we tested a lot of systems and kicked the tires in terms of, how do you ensure consistency? How do you make sure that each student is having a quality experience no matter who their coach is? How do you do virtual supervision with a college student and have the data available that you can look at together and talk about, outreach and, those students who weren't getting what they needed, students who were, we had concerns about. And so I think the good news for us is that we'd had lots of experiences with virtual programs. I think the key piece of our program that was in person, to Tiffany's point, was our Access program, our SAT prep program. And so it was a real challenge. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, to try to figure out how to bring the passion and the excitement of being in a room with a young person and talking to them about college as a college student and sharing your experience and your passion, how to translate that online. I can say that after several iterations now, I feel really good about the quality of those sessions and the ways in which coaches are finding to translate their experience and the curriculum in a virtual environment. I think programmatically, it opens up new pathways and doors for us. So when a program is virtual, we can reach students who are in education deserts. We can reach rural students who, there may not be a concentration of students that's big enough to justify or to sort of be able to afford to have, an SAT prep program in their town, in their neighborhood. And now that's possible because students can access, through Zoom and through phones and the rest. So I think for us, there have been some challenges. I think there's been a lot of learning. And I think for us, we're seeing that we can deliver with rigor. Our coaches can connect meaningfully and build relationships that allow them to do what Meg, you described, and they can do that virtually.
Thanks, Grace. It's so awesome hearing you talk about the program design and sort of the work that happens behind the scenes to make this happen. And it sounds like there's so much iteration, sort of quick pace iteration that happens to make sure that you're responding to what students are asking for and what students need. And so much of that is through feedback loops. And I imagine you're engaging with students often to receive feedback about what they're experiencing. I'm gonna pivot over to Tiffany because I feel like as a student, and as a coach, she's been giving Let's Get Ready lots of feedback, especially as a student leadership council committee member. Tiffany, I'd love to hear more about why you joined this new group and how you hope to continue your involvement and sort of what you hope to get out of this particular group in terms of helping Let's Get Ready become a more student-serving organization.
So Let's Get Ready has obviously been a huge part of my college experience, and I knew by joining this the Student Leadership Council, it would only enhance that experience. What really sold me though on joining the Student Leadership Council was realizing that students that were currently doing the LGR program were going to be a part of it. So like high school students who are doing the SAT program are currently also members. And I'm a strong believer, I might be a little bit biased, that LGR students are some of like the brightest, most innovative, most creative, most empathetic people out there. So I was really excited to get the chance to work with them. And we just had our first meeting a few weeks ago, and I was proven correct. The high school students were sharing amazing ideas, and they really made me think about things in a different perspective. So ultimately I joined because I wanted to have the opportunity to work with them and hear their new ideas and perspectives. I think productive discussion only comes from when every voice and everyone has a spot at the table. And I think the Student Leadership Council really emphasizes that. I think my hopes for that council are just to be able to listen to everyone's valuable experience and learn how we can make LGR's program even better, and specifically how we can support students in the best possible way.
Awesome. And you're not biased at all. I think everyone in the room agrees with you. I'm going to pause just for a moment to share with everyone. I'd love to see questions in the chat. Feel free to private message them to Allison Caffrey, or you can reply to everyone in the group. We'd love to surface some of your questions to the panelists here and also to Lena if you have questions about the strategic plan as well. I'm going to ask a few more questions of the panelists before we transition to Q&A. So Grace, I'm going to ping pong back over to you. And Tiffany just mentioned that she's excited about the energy that this group is going to bring to Let's Get Ready. Are there things that are front of mind for you as you think about the strategic plan, program innovations that you'd like to introduce in the short term that the folks in the room should know about?
Yeah, I think that in many ways, Let's Get Ready's model is like poised and has been, I think we've like tested the model with scale over these past few years. And I think have learned a lot about the systems, the processes, the curriculum that we need to be able to grow. So I'll give a few examples. So one of the pain points for our organization was around the communication platform. So as you can imagine, a lot of the work that Tiffany and our other amazing coaches are doing with their students is happening by text. And trust me, you might not believe it until you see it, like the richness of the conversations they're having and how much support and empathy and encouragement and incredible resource sharing and guidance happens over text. But in order to serve more students, we need a text platform that can allow us to access students, to be incredibly complex in terms of how we're parsing out and messaging just one group over here and another group. We want to be, increasingly sophisticated. The usability needs to work for our students, and we need to be able to get amazing data out of that platform to be able to learn in real time about what messages are most engaging for students. Where are there students that are having trouble and there's a problem and we need to flag that student and escalate so that a full-time staff member can be paying attention to intervening. And so we realized our old system wasn't working for us. We piloted last year with just over 1,000 students on a new platform and ultimately decided to move in that direction. We just transferred all 13,000 of our students to a new platform, which if you've ever done that, it's a scary work, and our operations team's amazing and our coaches adapted beautifully. And what it allows us to do is not only have some of that stuff that we needed, it also allows us to leverage the power of AI. And what we learned is we don't want artificial intelligence to replace any of the mentoring that's happening with our students. Like, we tested a little bit because a lot of our peers are doing that. And what we learned is, like, no, our near peers, the relationship that they build with our students is at the heart of what we're doing. But there are ways that we were learning, and we were helping the company that we're working with learn that actually we can use artificial intelligence without students even knowing, to make sure that anytime a message is, really kind of scary, or a student's struggling or says that they might drop out, and we don't want to miss it. We don't want a coach to miss it. Now that message gets sent directly to the program manager, the full-time staff, so everybody can pay attention and focus. That's an example of something that we need no matter what. But when we start to talk about 25,000 students annually, we need to have systems that can scale with us. So that's just an example of the kind of pilots that we're running, the kind of work that we're doing behind the scenes to be able to kind of be ready for that. And that's, there's curriculum work to be done, learning from the SLC, the student committee that Tiffany's on. We're going to ask them to take a look at our text curriculum and give us feedback about, how relatable is this? How impactful is this? There's so much that we can do to kind of get ready for this growth.
Amazing. It sounds like we are not only responding to student needs, we're also leveraging all these technologies, innovative best practices to advance the work. The questions are coming in hot and heavy, so continue to add questions in, folks. Send directly to Allison Caffrey if you'd like. I have a question for you, Meg, that came from the chat. So folks are asking about trends in higher ed. So we see that Let's Get Ready is doing a lot to stay on top of new technological advances. We'd love to hear from the higher ed admissions and higher ed student life perspective. What are some of the advances happening in that space that we can expect to continue now that we've had COVID for quite some time, we'll say?
So I think the obvious one is the whole concept of testing, and so many schools were forced to go test optional. Bowdoin has actually been test optional since 1969, the first school to do that. But I think last year presented all sorts of new challenges for schools who were forced to go test optional, just given the large number of testing sites that were canceled in the various sittings that just couldn't happen. And I think schools are really reevaluating that now. And there's a move towards test blind, where it's not even that you can submit scores, they're not going to look at them at all. And other schools are moving back to encouraging tests and really feeling as though that is an important marker. I think I was not at the big national conference 10 days ago, NACAC out in Seattle, but from colleagues, I heard that there are a lot of new ways that are being discussed as ways to evaluate students. One of the challenges we're facing, and this came about in terms of students who were applying to our fly-in program, was the big learning loss that has happened in schools. And we were encouraging students last year to submit a graded paper. And we did that for our fly-in program a year ago and tried to encourage it again this year. We were finding from various CBOs, especially in California, that there were entire junior year classes that never wrote a single paper. So there's this new challenge of how are we going as colleges making up for this learning loss? But I think there's also the questioning among admissions staff as to what ways should we be looking to evaluate students? And if we're seeing different progress in classrooms, are there other ways of measuring this. Something that Bowdoin has done in the past, and it's now being talked about by some various national groups, is bringing something like a video response. This is something that we offer students a chance to answer a question and think about it for about 30 seconds and then have 2 minutes to talk about this. And these are not meant academically to stump you. This is more about thinking about situational experiences. What are your values? What's important to you in terms of long-term goals? And I think it's a real question of what methods, are there going to be new methods to evaluate students who are applying to colleges? We have used the same format for decades, and I think there are various groups that are thinking about different ways of doing that. And it may be especially appropriate in this time of significant learning loss. I think, as I said, colleges are really struggling with what that's going to look like in terms of entering first year classes that may not be as well prepared as earlier classes. A hybrid year last year where many schools didn't, we've all read about this, right? Where students didn't have the technology to be able to plug into classes, or they didn't have the bandwidth to be able to do that while taking care of younger siblings. So I think that's a big issue, both how to bring students onto campus as well as what changes might happen. Will testing be there? So I think the other thing that is definitely changing is how students access schools, how they learn about schools. Are there ways to visit schools virtually? I know people are done with Zoom, but in a way that opens up a huge world for students who don't have the resources, who don't have the time to carve out college visits across, if they're trying to look at schools across the country. So I think that's a trend that we've said, I know it's going to be hard to go backwards after entering this virtual world. And I think going forward, a lot of the ways colleges show what their college is about is going to be a mix of virtual and in-person offerings. So that's a quick sort of overview as the issues that I see. Obviously, we could go much deeper. There are lots of issues that are happening right now with the FAFSA and the changes that are likely to come with that in another year to 2 years. So a lot on the horizon right now, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, the FAFSA has definitely been top of mind for us as we're thinking about affordability and students accessing the financial aid that they need. And I feel like what you're sharing with us, Meg, is, Let's Get Ready feels especially relevant and important right now because there might be some students who are getting lost along the way. So Tiffany, I'd love to hear from you. We're trying to recruit students where we hope to serve, not that we hope, we will. I can say that with assurance that we will serve 25,000 students annually by 2025. What's the pitch to students, Tiffany? How do we encourage students to engage with us, either as a student or a coach? But what's the pitch from your vantage point?
I think something that really excites me about Let's Get Ready that is also exciting to the students is that it's the peer mentor approach. It's not, you're not learning from someone who isn't going through the same thing as you. I'm also a college student. When they're filling out their FAFSA, I'm also filling out my FAFSA. When they're picking out their classes, I'm also picking out my classes. So I think that's something that will really help draw more students into the program. And then as far as attracting more college students to act as a mentor, I think that's just a matter of spreading the word about Let's Get Ready, because I know a lot of my friends, they're always super interested in the work that I'm doing and would love the opportunity to also work with these students and learn from them and hear their perspectives.
Awesome. So now we have you on board as a recruiter to recruit some of your younger friends who may not be graduating this coming year, but may still be with us in years to come. I have a question for Lena, and the question is about whether or not you plan on continuing the career fairs and sort of the career pathway building, bringing more opportunities like internships and other things to students. I paraphrased that question a bit and changed it a bit, but hopefully I caught the essence of it.
Yeah, totally. And whoever asked, let me know if I'm not responsive to it. I think there's two things I'd say here. One of the things about our strategic plan, and one of the really part of the important work we've been doing over the last several years, is to really hone in and focus on what our core competency is and really what our core outcomes are, which really are about near peer coaching for college success. That said, I think there's two really important ways to think about the career question. All of this has to be in service of students having really meaningful lives after, right? They leave Let's Get Ready and leave college as well. And I think one important way that we do that is through our coaches are all paid employees of the organization. So they themselves are having what I hope, and Tiffany could speak to this more, but what I hope is a really meaningful and educational often first, or at least early professional experience. And we really want to set the groundwork for those coaches to be going out into the world, having had this really important, meaningful position with high accountability, learning lots of systems, exposure to Excel, exposure to Salesforce, all of these things, and sort of helping those coaches translate that to the marketplace. So I think we've talked a lot internally about how we can help coaches as these sort of early, having this experience with us as early professionals, move into the next phase of their professional journey. But the other thing I'd say is that as we want to find new partners to work with us and hand off their students to us for the next phase of the student's journey, we want to do the same thing. So as we are sort of, thinking about partnerships, we're also thinking about who are the experts in the career advising world? Who are the people who have those relationships with employers that are deeply embedded in the corporate world, who are building those pipelines into employment for the students that we're serving? And really over time building, I think potentially we could really build sort of large scale partnerships with those organizations. Again, maintaining our sort of focus on our area around college graduation, but recognizing there's other experts in the field who are doing incredible work with career preparation and career placement. And so really building those pipelines through collaboration and partnership.
Thanks, Lena. So we're going to wrap up our panel today in Q&A with one final question for our panelists. I'd love to hear from all four of you, brief comments, if you would. What's one thing that you're excited about happening at Let's Get Ready? What's bringing you hope as you think about your engagement with Let's Get Ready? Let's start with you, Lena, and then we'll go to Grace, Meg, and Tiffany to close us out.
I mean, what gives me hope is I think the sort of how solid this plan is and how many people are excited by it and the momentum I'm seeing. But really what I want to say is what really brings me hope is I had the pleasure of being part of the first Student Leadership Council meeting. I was there for the first part of it. And I got off that call. I mean, that's the best thing I've done this year. It was just so energizing, so exciting. It really made me so excited about the future of Let's Get Ready, the future period, right? With these amazing young people who are sort of taking the reins. And I just think that's sort of the crux of what we're doing. And it really came through in that meeting. So thank you, Tiffany, and the rest of the Student Leadership Council.
I think for me, like the thing that makes me excited every single day about the work that we do and the work that I get to do in service of what we do as an organization is I spend hours in a week reading messages that our students are exchanging with their coaches, reading the logs of their phone calls. And I think this pandemic has shown us like what it means to have a peer mentor in your pocket. Like you're lonely, you're at home, you just got yanked away from college, you're in your parents' house and you're sharing a laptop with a younger sibling and everything feels hard and confusing. And there's an ear peer there that's walking you through it and it's sharing their experience. And there's no adult who's already been through this that's telling you how to do it. There's somebody who's right there. And I just think the quality of those conversations and the meaning behind those relationships to me, I'm just so excited for more students to have access to that, to kind of come out of that isolation and have somebody who can serve as a guide and as a role model and as an inspiration. I just think it's a really powerful and meaningful relationship. And I'm excited to see more students have access to that.
Grace took what I was going to say, and so I'll just boil it down to, I think the near peer mentoring concept is just incredible. And as you look at the projected increase in students impacted by it, just this ever evolving community of young people who are going to support these challenging moments of going from high school to college and getting through it. And I think that support network is key to managing this challenging moment in time.
I would probably have to say also the Student Leadership Council is super new, super exciting. Everyone is eager to participate and share their ideas. There's great discussions happening, and I know that a lot of good is going to come from this council.
Wonderful. And I'm just encouraged by everyone who showed up today. So thank you for sharing your time with us. It's been so great to see familiar faces and to hopefully get acquainted with new faces soon. So I'll pass it to Lena to close this out, but thanks again and much appreciation for being with us.
Yeah, I would just echo that appreciation and reiterate that, you know, all of us on the call, but I'm for sure I'm always available to talk about college and access and success broadly, but also Let's Get Ready specifically. So look forward to continuing the conversation, and truly thank you for joining us. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.